4:46 a.m., a female colleague pulls into the parking lot of the Little Sue's convenience store in rural Virginia. It is still dark. The road is virtually deserted. Nothing seems amiss until she spots a car with the engine still running. It belongs to Arielle Smith. Arielle should have driven home hours ago, but she is nowhere to be found. The store was closed. There was no one inside. And the strangest thing was that Arielle's personal belongings were still in her car. Her handbag was there. The items she usually carried with her were still there too. Yet, the 28-year-old woman had vanished. No one knew where she had gone. No one saw her leave the store. And no one knew that, just hours earlier, Arielle had sent a text message to her sister. A message that would later become central to the investigation. She mentioned a man loitering near the store. Someone who made her feel uneasy. At the time, Arielle likely just wanted to let her sister know she was staying alert. She must have thought she would finish her shift, get in her car, and go home like any other day. But she never made it home. And the question police needed to answer in the days that followed was, what happened in the few minutes after Arielle stepped out to the back of the store? I'm your host. In today's story, we look back at the final night of Arielle Smith's life. Tracing every milestone, every piece of surveillance footage, every phone signal, and every clue that helped investigators uncover the truth. Arielle Latrice Smith was born on July 1, 1993. She grew up in northern Neck, Virginia, a region characterized by small communities, long stretches of road, and vast, open spaces. At 28, Arielle was living in Hague, Virginia. She was working hard to build a stable life. Arielle had plans for the future. She was interested in healthcare and aspired to become a nurse. She had begun looking for job opportunities and interviewing at facilities for the elderly. It is a time when young people often begin laying the foundations for their futures. However, while waiting for such an opportunity, Arielle still needed a job to make ends meet. Consequently, she worked at Little Sue, a small convenience store and gas station located on Northumberland Highway in Claraville. During the day, the place bustled with customers. But once night fell, the atmosphere changed completely. After closing time, the employee on the final shift had to handle the remaining tasks alone. Checking the doors, balancing the register, cleaning up, taking out the trash, and finally heading home. The night of January 12, 2022 began like any other ordinary shift. Arielle arrived at work and went about her familiar routine. However, during that shift, a man appeared near the store. Arielle noticed him. She didn't know exactly what he wanted. There was no direct confrontation, but his presence made her feel uneasy. Arielle texted her sister, Lydia. At first, this detail seemed insignificant, but after Arielle went missing, the message became a crucial clue in the case. It indicated that Arielle sensed something amiss before she vanished. Around 9:05 p.m., security cameras captured Arielle finishing up her closing duties. She was preparing to lock the shop. Her car was still running, the engine idling, likely to warm it up before she left. Everything appeared completely normal. Around 9:18 p.m., another vehicle pulled into the parking lot. Arielle stepped outside and got into the car. However, moments later, she stepped out of the vehicle and returned to the store. The driver was later identified as a close friend of Arielle's. He had simply stopped by to visit her. Investigators checked his statement, reviewed the camera footage, and verified his movements. Ultimately, he was ruled out as a suspect. Nevertheless, the incident established a vital fact. The identity of the last person to see Arielle alive was confirmed. Arielle went back inside and resumed her work. Afterward, she locked the door and carried out a bag of trash. She walked toward the back of the store. Security cameras recorded her heading toward the dumpster area. Then, she disappeared from the frame. There was no footage of her returning, no footage of her getting into her car, and no footage explaining what happened next. That was the blind spot of the case. A fleeting moment, yet long enough for a life to vanish. The next morning, when a colleague arrived at the store, Arielle's car was still there. The engine was still running. The store was closed. There was no sign of Arielle anywhere. Police were called at 4:46 a.m., and the missing person case quickly escalated into an urgent investigation. Officers searched the store, the vehicle, and the surrounding area, but Arielle had disappeared. They then reviewed surveillance footage. What they saw only deepened the mystery. The camera captured Arielle walking toward the back of the store, but offered no clues as to where she went next. That marked the beginning of the investigation. I want you to picture the scene back then. A small store, a car with its engine still running, a purse left inside, a woman who had vanished, and behind the store lay an area outside the range of security cameras. For investigators, this was no ordinary missing person case. If Arielle had left of her own accord, why didn't she drive? If she went on foot, which direction did she take? If someone picked her up, what kind of vehicle was it? And if she was in danger, where had the perpetrator been waiting for her? Police began scrutinizing the surveillance footage, second by second. They checked every vehicle that appeared during the time Arielle was working. They identified a friend's car. This friend was questioned. His statement was verified, and he was ruled out as a suspect. However, there was still a gap in the footage. Arielle had stepped out to the back of the store. After that, there was no further trace of her. A Virginia State Police K-9 unit was deployed. The dogs began sniffing for Arielle's trail. They moved around the store, checking the area behind the building and the vicinity of the dumpsters. Then, they picked up a scent, Arielle's scent. But then, something strange happened. The trail did not continue along a standard path. It led away from the area behind the store toward Walnut Point Road, a distance of about 100 yards, nearly 90 meters, and then stopped. There were no clear signs that Arielle had continued walking. To investigators, this raised a terrifying possibility. Arielle might have been taken away in a vehicle. She might not have left the area on her own, and if another vehicle had come to pick her up, the police needed to know who owned it. While the search team worked at the scene, investigators examined Arielle's phone. They reviewed calls, text messages, and contact logs, as well as mobile device location data from the vicinity of Little Sioux. They also revisited a detail provided by her family, a text message Arielle had sent to Lydia, mentioning a man, someone who made her feel uncomfortable. To the police, this was a crucial lead. They needed to determine who had been near the store at that time, and the phone data began to reveal the answer. A device was detected near the Little Sioux store around the time Arielle went missing. This device belonged to Tyrone Samuel, who was 50 years old at the time. His phone signal was traced to the vicinity of the store during that critical window. This did not automatically make him the perpetrator. A person could be near a location without being involved in any criminal activity. However, in a missing person case, the coincidence of the phone's location and the time the victim vanished was something investigators could not overlook. They began looking into Samuel. Who was he? Why was he near Little Sioux? How did he know Arielle? And why did his phone register a signal there at that specific moment? The answers to these questions soon shifted the direction of the investigation. On January 15th, just days after Arielle disappeared, Tyrone Samuel was arrested on kidnapping charges. However, his arrest did not answer the most crucial question: where was Arielle? Police understood that to prove Samuel's involvement, they needed to find Arielle. They needed physical evidence, and they needed to determine what had happened after she left Little Sioux. Investigators obtained a search warrant for Samuel's residence in Heathsville. Forensic teams arrived and began examining every area: the house, the rooms, the carpets, and the walls, searching for any possible traces. They then discovered a significant detail: stains resembling blood on the walls and carpets. Samples were collected and sent for testing. Meanwhile, a large-scale search operation was launched, involving more than 50 officers from various agencies. They thoroughly combed Samuel's property, including densely wooded areas, remote spots, and locations where a body could be concealed. Winter weather made the task exponentially more difficult, yet investigators could not afford to delay. With every passing hour, potential evidence risked being lost. Throughout this time, Arielle's family waited anxiously for news they hoped would be, "We've found her." Little did they know, however, that the search was about to lead to an outcome no one wanted. January 18th, 2022. 6 days after Arielle went missing, a search team entered the wooded area on Tyrone Samuel's property. They methodically combed the grounds, inspecting the terrain and looking for anything unusual. Then, an investigator discovered something that brought the entire search to a halt. A body, that of a woman. Police quickly cordoned off the scene. The body was removed for identification. Shortly thereafter, Arielle's family's worst fears were realized. It was Arielle Smith. After a 6-day search, she had been found, but not in the way her family had hoped. The search was over, yet the family's anguish was only just beginning. Investigators now had the body, a suspect, phone data, surveillance footage, and the crime scene itself. However, they still needed to prove exactly what had happened. Forensic experts examined the body, while investigators continued to search Samuel's property. Evidence found inside the house began to take on greater significance. Traces of what appeared to be blood were discovered on the walls and carpet. Testing confirmed a link between these traces and Arielle. This established a direct connection. Arielle had not only been near Samuel's property, but had also been inside the house. Furthermore, there were signs indicating a struggle or a violent incident. Samuel himself bore numerous scratches and injuries. Investigators suspected these were the result of a physical altercation, but Samuel offered a different explanation. He claimed he had been injured while driving a go-kart and crashing into a tree. However, investigators remained unconvinced. When those injuries were considered alongside other evidence, the story became difficult to explain. Let's return to the Little Sue shop. Arielle had locked up, taken out the trash, and walked toward the back of the building. Police dogs picked up her scent. The trail led toward Walnut Point, a distance of about 100 yards, nearly 90 meters, before abruptly stopping. This aligned with the theory that she might have been taken away in a vehicle. Samuel's phone pinged near the store. Afterward, he left the area. A few days later, Arielle's body was discovered on his property. These were no longer isolated coincidences. They formed a pattern, a sequence of events that investigators began to piece together. They believed Samuel might have waited for Arielle behind the store, in a spot out of view of the security cameras. When she stepped outside, he likely approached her and took her away from the scene. However, exactly what transpired in the ensuing minutes remained the most difficult question to answer. There was no camera footage. There were no witnesses. Consequently, investigators were forced to rely on the available evidence: traces, data, forensic results, testimonies, and the location where the body was found. On January 25, 2022, a Northumberland County grand jury formally indicted Samuel on a charge of first-degree murder. The case had now become a homicide investigation. Samuel was held without bail. Meanwhile, Arielle's family struggled to make sense of what had happened to her. They knew she was a cautious person. They knew she had texted her sister. They knew she had gone to work just like any other day. And then, she never returned. There was a particularly heartbreaking aspect to the situation. Arielle was preparing for her future. She wanted to enter the healthcare field. She was looking for a job and planning her life. Yet that night shift turned out to be her last. No one realized it was the final time they would see her alive. Now, the police faced a crucial question. Why was Samuel there? What was the connection between the two? Investigation results revealed that Arielle knew Samuel through his family members, yet her own family insisted they had never met the man. This detail only deepened the mystery. A man who was a stranger to the victim's family. A man who appeared near her workplace. A phone that tracked to the exact location at the critical time. A victim who vanished, only to be found later on that very man's property. These questions would become central to the case. But Samuel would face more than just questions. He would also have to confront concrete evidence. Cases occurring in the era of surveillance cameras and mobile phones often possess unique characteristics. People may lie, alter their statements, or claim they never met the victim. However, electronic data and physical evidence frequently tell a different story. In the Arielle Smith case, although cameras did not capture the final moments, they did record the events of the minutes immediately preceding them. A mobile phone might not record the actual attack, yet it reveals the device's location. Police dogs did not see the perpetrator, but they successfully tracked Arielle's scent. Forensic analysis, while unable to reconstruct the entire incident, identified traces of the victim. All these elements combined to form a complete picture. Investigators believed Samuel was near Little Sue's store when Arielle disappeared. After she walked behind the store, she was likely approached and abducted from the area. The trail followed by the police dogs ended in the Walnut Point area, and Samuel's phone activity coincided with that time frame. Following this lead, investigators traced Samuel back to his home. They discovered evidence and ultimately found Arielle on his property. To the police, this constituted a compelling chain of evidence. However, a criminal case requires more. The prosecution must prove the defendant's legal culpability, and Samuel was entitled to a trial. Had the case gone before a jury, investigators would have had to present everything they had gathered, but the course of the case changed. Samuel decided to accept a plea bargain. October 31st, 2023, nearly 2 years after his arrest, Samuel appeared in court. Instead of undergoing a lengthy trial, he pleaded guilty to charges related to the kidnapping and murder of Arielle. The final sentence, 27 years in prison. Legally speaking, that marked the end of the case. But for Arielle's family, countless unanswered questions likely remain. Why? Why couldn't a woman simply finish her shift and return home safely? Why was she targeted? What really happened during those moments not captured on camera? Those questions may never find a complete answer. Yet, let us look back at the case once more. 9:05 p.m. Arielle began closing up the store. 9:18 p.m. A friend arrived. Arielle got into the car, then stepped back out. She continued working. The store closed. Her car was still running. Arielle picked up a bag of trash. She walked toward the back of the store. The camera lost sight of her. Police dogs picked up her scent. The trail led toward Walnut Point, a distance of about 100 yards, nearly 90 meters, and then vanished. Tyrone Samuel's phone signal was recorded near that area. He was arrested on January 15th. Arielle's body was found on January 18th. Samuel was charged with first-degree murder on January 25th. On October 31st, 2023, he pleaded guilty. The sentence was 27 years in prison. That is the timeline of a case that began with a text message and ended with a conviction. But spanning the time between those 2 points were hundreds of hours of searching. Dozens of investigators, phone calls, interrogations, searches, and a family living in profound anguish. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of this case is the uncanny ordinariness of those final moments. Arielle did not walk into an obviously dangerous place. She did not embark on some daring adventure. She was simply working. She was closing up the shop. She was taking out the trash. She just wanted to go home. That is precisely what makes this story so terrifying. Because sometimes, a person's life can change in a matter of minutes, without a single clear warning sign. Someone steps out of the camera's view and never returns. Consider the last things Arielle did. They were nothing extraordinary. No long-distance trip, no special event. She was simply going about her routine, locking up the shop, taking out the trash, and getting ready to head home. Perhaps she was thinking about the next day, or mulling over work matters. She might have been thinking about job interviews in the healthcare field, or simply looking forward to resting at home. But she never got the chance to do those things. Arielle Smith was only 28 years old. At that age, many people are still trying to find their footing in life, and she was no exception. She had plans, goals, loved ones, and a future awaiting her. Yet, that future was stolen away. When recounting incidents like this, it is crucial not to let the victim become merely a faceless name. We shouldn't simply say, Arielle Smith, a murder victim. After all, before becoming a victim, she was a flesh and blood human being. She was a daughter and a sister to Lydia. She was someone striving for a better job, harboring dreams of becoming a nurse, and making plans for her life. And these are the things we must remember. There is one detail in this case that particularly struck me: the text message Arielle sent to her sister. She had no idea what was about to happen, nor did she know if the man involved had any connection to her. Yet, she felt uneasy and spoke up. After she went missing, those messages became a vital part of the investigation. A seemingly ordinary text helped investigators realize that Arielle might have sensed danger before it actually struck. This underscores why no detail, however small, can be overlooked in missing person cases. A phone call, a text message, a vehicle, a stranger, or an unusual action. Sometimes, these seemingly trivial elements turn out to be crucial initial clues. The Arielle Smith case also demonstrates the power of a methodical, step-by-step investigative process, given that the police had absolutely no idea who the perpetrator was at the outset. They didn't have the answer the moment they walked into Little Sue's. All they had was a car, an empty store, and a missing woman. Then came the surveillance footage. Then the friend. Then the K-9 unit. Then a trail stretching 100 yards. Then the phone. Then the name Tyrone Samuel. Then the arrest. Then the search. Then the forensic evidence. And finally, the victim's body. Step by step, clue by clue, until the full picture gradually came into focus. That is the nature of a criminal investigation. There isn't always a single piece of evidence that solves everything. Sometimes, the truth is scattered across dozens of tiny details. And the investigator's job is to find them, scrutinize them, cross-reference them, and piece them all together. On October 31, 2023, Tyrone Samuel pleaded guilty. A sentence of 27 years in prison. A figure for the record. A sentence to be read aloud in court. But for Arielle's family, no number could measure this loss. 27 years in prison could not bring back their daughter, could not bring back their sister, could not restore the birthdays or the holidays, the phone calls, the memories that should have been made. Nor could it restore Arielle's future. Had she lived, Arielle would have entered a completely different phase of her life by now. She might have become a nurse. She might have changed careers. She might have moved away. She might have married. She might have had children. She might have realized one of the dreams she was nurturing at 28. No one will ever know, because all those possibilities were stolen away. And that is precisely the most painful part of a murder. It is not merely the loss of a life, but the vanishing of everything that person was meant to experience. That night, a car engine was left running at Little Sue. The store was locked. A bag of trash sat out back. There was a gap in the surveillance footage. And a woman never made it home. 6 days later, her family learned the truth. Nearly 2 years later, the accused faced justice. And finally, the verdict was handed down. But Arielle's story should not end with the name of her killer. It should end with her own name, Arielle Smith, 28 years old, a woman with dreams. Now, someone who always looked toward the future. Someone who should have simply finished her shift and gone home. But she never got that chance. If you are following this story, remember one thing. Behind every missing person's file is a real human being. Behind every missing person's flyer is a family. And behind every name is a life that once was. Arielle was not merely a case. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a young woman with so many plans for the future. And even though the case has reached its conclusion, the most important thing is not to let the memory of her fade with time. Sometimes, justice cannot change the past, but the truth can ensure that the victim is not forgotten. Arielle Smith walked out of the Little Sue store on the night of January 12, 2022. She had no idea it would be the last time she ever stepped outside. She did not know that a camera behind the store had captured her final images. She did not know that a text message sent to her sister would become a crucial clue in the investigation. And she did not know that, 6 days later, dozens of investigators would find her on a plot of land not far from her workplace. But today, we know these things. We know how the clues were pieced together. We know the name Tyrone Samuel. We know the course of the investigation. And we know that, in the end, Arielle was found. Not in the way her family had hoped, but at least the question, where is she, was answered. And perhaps, that was the one thing Arielle's family longed for during those days of agonizing pain. She did not simply vanish. Her life was merely taken from her far too soon, and her story will continue to be told. Arielle Smith, may she rest in peace. If you are interested in true crime cases, evidence-based investigations, and objective analyses of how cases are solved, please subscribe and follow the channel to join us in exploring future case files.